If we could have all members from Local Government Committee please come down to room 127 so we can get started. Thank you. Room 127. We got a quorum. With the arrival of Mr. Bradford, we do have a quorum, so we'd like to get everything started. If we could have the secretary call the rolls to establish a quorum.
Smythe.
Here.
Caballero. Here. Arambula. Bradford.
Mr. Bradford. Here.
Davis. Knight. Logue. Solorio. Torlakson.
All right, a quorum has Mr. Solorio has arrived as well.
Okay.
Quorum has established. Welcome everyone to local government. First item of business, item number 5, has been pulled from the agenda. So if anyone is here for that item, you are dismissed. And also, Assemblyman Torlakson has been appointed by the Speaker to fill the vacancy that currently exists on Local Government Committee. At this point, we'd like to go in sign in order, and so we will have Assemblymember Jeffries. You're up first. You have 2 items. Which is your pleasure?
I'd like to do 1969 first.
Thank you. That's item number 4 on everybody's agenda.
Appreciate the chair allowing me to do so. I have a person that's going to testify for over 8 hours to get here. So they would like to get back on the road. This formerly known as the Home of Peace, to a total of up to 536 internments, provided they meet the guidelines stated above. The same measure has been granted to the Orville Cemetery District. They also were allowed to bury non-residents in a cemetery in their district. AB 1969 is very beneficial because it will bring a badly needed revenue source to the district, and also it will respect the needs of the Jewish faith-based community. With me is Richard Staley, who is on the Board of Trustees for the Elsinore Cemetery District and can answer any questions you may have. And
we have a motion and a second. Mr. Staley, briefly.
I'm Richard Staley, a trustee of the Elsinore Valley Cemetery District. And I come here on behalf of the trustees of that district asking for your support for Assembly Bill 1969. Almost 30 years ago, the late Senator Ray Johnson authored Senate Bill 1906, which would allow Oroville Cemetery District to inter non-residents in their specific cemetery within their district. On January 1, 1983, that bill became a part of the California Health and Safety Code and is found as Section 9063. In our Elsinore Valley, the former Jewish community diminished through the years, and in 1995, our district acquired their adjacent cemetery. Presently, there are many of the Jewish faith in surrounding areas with no public cemetery other than ours to serve their needs. We feel that Assembly Bill 1969 would allow Elsinore Valley Cemetery District to utilize a specific and available section of our cemetery. I appreciate your consideration of Assembly Bill 1969 and respectfully request your kind support.
Thank you very much. Are there any other witnesses here in support of the bill? Seeing none, any witnesses in opposition? Any questions from the committee? All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Jeffries?
Just respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass. Smythe?
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Arambula? Bradford? Bradford, aye. Davis? Davis, aye. Knight? Knight, aye. Logue? Solorio? Solorio, aye. Torlakson?
That bill is out, 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Hopefully you can get back on the road in time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Certainly, sir. Mr. Jeffries, item number 2, AB 1671.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair and members. Members, in the late 1800s, at a time when California had a total population of just 800,000 residents in the entire state, the governor was given the power to fill vacancies on county board of supervisors. Since that time, we have grown to a state of 38 million residents in 58 counties. As members of the legislature, we can also easily acknowledge that we have put significantly more responsibilities and mandates on the shoulders of local counties to do more and arguably do more with less. Our local counties are much more sophisticated and much tougher and have a much tougher job to do. Our voters also demand that their counties be responsive and accountable. Continuing a top-down practice that originated in the 1800s is arguably not the most efficient or even not the most respectful way to deal with what is clearly a local government issue. The current system has caused difficult delays for several counties who had vacancies and had to wait up to 4 or 5 months. In one county, they not only had a vacancy, but they had a sitting county supervisor who was out for a medical condition, and the business of the county almost came to a grinding halt waiting for the vacancy to be filled. Members, this bill is very simple in its approach to future vacancies. If a vacancy on the Board of Supervisors occurs, the remaining board members shall have the authority to vote by majority to appoint a qualified person, or to vote to call for a special election, or even vote to send the matter to the governor. If upon 90 days they've taken no action as proposed in this bill, or they failed to take action, the matter is automatically sent to the governor. This bill is in no way intended to be a critique of any governor's past appointments. We are simply trying to recognize the responsibilities and the abilities of local government to manage their affairs until the state of California steps in. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have 2 supporters here, and if you'd like to add anything.
Thank you very much. Witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jeffries, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, representing the 31 rural counties boards of supervisors. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Jeffries and his staff for this bill and working with us to iron out some concerns and some thoughts. Also want to thank the local government committee staff for their time and the discussions we've had. We are in strong support of reforming the current process whereby vacancies occur and vacancies are filled. Let me speak just for a moment really to the rural issue. We have two counties recently have a very, very long time going without a supervisor due to a death. Trinity County in the very, very far north waited 9 months for their appointment to be filled. Recently, Mono County, which had a death last October, just got filled 2 or 3 weeks ago, almost 5 months without a supervisor sitting on that board. When you get down to 4 votes, it gets very, very, very dicey in terms of being able to do regular business. You have one other member who's out sick or whatever. It makes it very, very difficult. I guess the bottom line that we ask in the rural community is how important are these filling of vacancies to any governor, regardless of party or timing. Our counties are very small. They're very remote in most cases. And just with all due respect to any governor, is that really a priority when you have so many other things going on in the state? We're also just very, very concerned that there's just no time limit for these appointments to occur. And we strongly believe that there should be, so we have some certainty as to when that will occur. I know there's been some concerns about giving this authority to our boards to appoint their colleagues in vacancies, but I'll just remind the committee that charter counties have this ability, as well as counties, boards of supervisors have the ability to fill a vacancy for a sheriff, which is county-wide, and all of those other officers, assessor, district attorney, and whatnot. And then I'll finally lead you with the notions about special districts. We're very concerned about any mandate that these vacancies be filled through a special elections process, extremely expensive to do. With that, we urge reform of this effort and move this bill along.
Mr. Chair, members, Jean Hurst on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. I think I would echo the comments of my colleagues from the rural counties. As Paul mentioned, this doesn't happen infrequently, and frankly, certainly doesn't rise to number 1, or I think even the top 10 of a governor's priority list. So we are in support of creating an efficient process that does have some sort of certainty to it, and urge your support. I would just remind folks that we do our business in public. This isn't something that would happen behind closed doors, so we certainly would be accountable to the voters under that aspect. We urge your aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses in support? At this point, we'll just add the Me Too's.
Mr. Chair, Michael Corbett, representing the Board of Supervisors of Riverside County. We have not taken a formal position on the bill, but I would like to point out to the committee that it would have been great to have this option available when we had a vacancy occur several months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Questions from the committee? Mr. Bradford?
I know you gave some examples, but where over the past years has the system failed to work in a responsible manner, understanding how we're currently doing it by the governor's appointment?
Yeah, I don't know that you can say that you have a system-wide failure as much as you have a system-wide case of heartburn or inconvenience for local government waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the governor's office to make a decision. I can only speak firsthand experience in my county, Riverside, with over 2 million, where we had a vacancy, and then while the vacancy occurred, another sitting supervisor had a medical condition and could not attend a number of meetings at a time when they needed 4/5 votes on budget issues, and couldn't even have the meetings to take care of business, and so they were at the mercy of the governor's office to get that appointment filled. And as we've just heard, we've heard counties that wait anywhere between 4 and, in one case, up to 9 months. Some would argue if you're that local government individual, that is a failure. Others might just say that's a simple inconvenience that can be rectified.
Then wouldn't it be better just to set a time frame in which the appointment has to be made by the governor, similar to the vacancies like in the LG?
That's certainly an argument to say that the governor is going to have to, future governors are going to have to do things faster. But in the same argument, we've also said that charter counties don't have to wait for a governor's appointment, that we've recognized that charter counties have that authority. I guess the question you'd ask today is, why are the people in those counties different than the people in non-charter counties in allowing their vacancies to be filled sooner by locals where they could be held accountable? Why do we decide that a certain segment of population in California has a different set of rules for filling a vacancy than the rest? I would make the case that all counties in this particular case related to vacancies should be treated equally and given the same opportunity to fill their vacancies either by appointment or potentially a special election.
I too have some concerns in terms of where we go. It would appear that time limits in the governor's office would be critical, and that we could depend upon that executive to follow through expeditiously. And if there was some need for legislation, that perhaps that might be where we should go. I certainly don't want to stop progress, but there is no consistency in policy in terms of what we allow counties to do at the local government level. For example, we don't allow them to impose taxes and fees as they wish, or particularly taxes as they wish, in charter counties when they want to balance their budget. And so I think that really the current system, there has not been a specific incident that we have contacted the governor's office, required them to respond to us, and they failed to do so. And you've referenced future governors, and even as we look at future governors, the same operation that we have today won't exist in future governors. We would think that there's a reason for the current system and that it could work effectively. So, I mean, with all of these variables out there, I'm not so sure that to reinvent the wheel will get us any different results overall. I'm not necessarily committed at this point with the bill for that reason. I believe that the governor's office can respond expeditiously, and if we need to put legislation in place, I think we can do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, I have the same issues and concerns that Mr. Bradley has, and I guess as I look at the different options, I'm a little bit troubled by the concern, or not the concern, but the analysis of it costs money to do an election, so we'd rather get around doing that and instead vest the authority with the board. Given that, as our history, as it's articulated in our report, indicates that the state has never allowed the boards to unilaterally choose the replacement. And this would be really flying in the face. And sometimes I'm willing to fly in the face, and other times I just wonder whether that's the best way to go. I feel pretty strongly that a time limit is really what we're looking for, because basically what it'll do is it'll force the governor to make a decision whether are you an instrument of the state, and if you are, then I better move quickly. And if I'm not, then there's another process that you can use, and then talking about whether it might be a board appointment or an election might be appropriate. So I'm not prepared to support it today, but I really think that giving some time, a time frame, and
Sure.
and dealing with it that way is the best way.
We've
to go.
actually had it's sort of a chicken and egg argument, which one comes first, and you could actually flip it and say the governor has X number of days to make the appointment, and if he or she fails, then it reverts to Plan B. I mean, giving it to the local. So I would have to say, as the author of this bill, I'm not terribly opposed to flipping it and doing that. It just coming from local government, not being happy with the state always telling us how to conduct our business. I would prefer to err on the side of local government first, but recognizing that there are different opinions to how to solve this. We could go there if we had to go there, certainly.
Mr. Solario.
Yes, I just want to say I agree with the points made by Assemblymember Bradford. I think maybe some amendments that I'd be willing to live with in this bill or another bill that you might author, if we give the governor strict parameters on how many days he has to appoint somebody. That way you get the urgency, you get somebody quick, and the governor's used to appointing hundreds and hundreds of people. Sure. And so I think they're well equipped to vet candidates and make sure that there's a fair process in making the appointment. So just my 2 cents in terms of why I can't support this, but what I would be willing to support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin, I just asked a question. Is there a time frame on the appointments also in your legislation for the board? In other words,
For the Board of Supervisors, they have 90 days.
okay. I support your bill. I was a county supervisor for 6 years, and I always fall when it comes to government. I think local government's better than state government, so I'm always willing to shift power away from Sacramento back to local government because I think local government is flexible, and many members on this panel know right now that if you're involved in local government, you have the pulse of the community a heck of a lot better than the people in Sacramento. So I'd rather see us redirect our emphasis away from Sacramento and try to work with these counties, especially now with the budget issues that we have. We could be in a situation where they have to make some decisions, and it's crucial to the county on whether or not they're going to even survive based upon that vote. And in most counties, it's a 5 vote. So if you end up with a 2-2, vote, then you're going to have basically a standoff continuously. So I think that you have a great bill here. I think local government's going to get behind it. I think it's a smart move, so I vote yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jeffries, you can close. What is your pleasure?
You know, I can count votes as good as anybody. I of course would like to see local government given the first opportunity. If the committee is not inclined to pass it with local government as the first option, then certainly what I will do is recognize the thoughts that have been shared today and come back with under reconsideration, I assume, if the chair would so grant, and present a reversal of this. So,
but it's your call. We don't have to proceed with a vote today. If you would rather pull the bill back and work with some of the amendments that have been discussed, and then you can bring it back in the amended form. We have several hearings now for the next several months, so you can bring it back at that time. Or if you would like to proceed with a vote as is, that certainly is your pleasure.
Well, there's bills you fight and you fall on the sword for, and there's bills that you make your amendments and you get the job done. So, if I'd like to defer to my supporters, but does it matter to you? Okay. Well, what we'll do then is we will reverse the bill so that the governor gets X number of days, and then we'll come back and
very good. Then we'll
present it that way.
Thank you for your testimony. Then we'll look forward to seeing the bill in another form. Thank you. Members, while we're transitioning to our next item, we do have a consent calendar, if someone would like to move that. Great. We have a motion by Mr. Knight, second by Mr. Logue. Consent calendar is Assembly Bill 1668, 1732, Senate Bill 613, Senate Bill 841, Senate Bill 842, and Senate Bill 843. We've got a motion second on consent. Please call the roll.
Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Arambula. Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Solorio, aye. Torlakson. Torlakson, aye.
All right, that consent calendar is out. What we'd like to do is, Mr. Cotto, please, your bill is up, item number 7, and we'd like to do is try to have 3 witnesses on either side, and keep it within reasonable time frame. I'll let you know. So,
brought plenty of,
certainly you can speak as long as you would like,
yes,
Mr. Cotto, of course.
Members, thank you very much for allowing me to present this before your committee. This is a district bill, and I'm pleased to say that most of the legislators in the area of this bill have all signed on as co-authors. What this bill does is it makes transparent and coherent the Santa Clara Valley Water District Act. It updates the existing act, which was adopted some 60 years ago, nearly 60 years ago in 51. Beginning in 2008, the district conducted a series of meetings throughout Santa Clara County to solicit public input into potential changes to the act. That input in part has guided this proposed legislation. I want to say to the committee that we have worked with people who have suggestions and or issues with aspects of the bill, and that we will continue to work with them and with our water district partners to create a water plan for Santa Clara Valley which all can find acceptable. As you know, Mr. Chairman, this bill is double referred and will go to Parks and Wildlife as a second stop. This bill addresses watershed stewardship, groundwater management, and flood protection. This rewrite addresses water management challenges and population growth issues not conceived of some 60 years ago. The bill calls for greater accountability and more opportunity for public input. It clarifies redundant language and ambiguous language. It strengthens the district's ability to manage and conserve water resources. It adds climate change language to reflect 21st century realities. And it does all of that in 49 pages, right? So it's pretty comprehensive piece of legislation. And I said, pleased that most of the legislators in the area have signed on as co-authors. With me today, Mr. Chair, are to testify are representatives of the district board and district staff to answer any of our questions. Let's begin first with longtime member of the board, Mr. Larry Wilson.
Thank you. Second. Being on the board, when someone says that, usually I keep my mouth shut. But I will go ahead with my statement if you don't mind. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. The Santa Clara Valley Water District provides drinking water for more than 1.7 million people, manages the local groundwater basins, and provides environmental stewardship and flood management services throughout Santa Clara County. Nearly half of our drinking water in our county is imported through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. This proposed update to our district act is necessary to respond to the water supply and management challenges facing our county, not the least of which is the reduced reliability of our supplies currently imported through the Delta and the Hetch Hetchy system. Our board has been discussing the potential provisions and language of this update in nearly 24 open meetings for more than 2 years now. We began this process with a notice to all of our stakeholders to participate in public meetings, which began in 2008. The actual introduction of the bill language has been available on our website for more than 6 months. Throughout this process, we received no direct feedback, negative or positive, from the groups you will hear from in opposition here today. Now that the legislation is in print, some seem to have appropriate incentive to engage in the process of negotiating the means to this important end. Attempting to delay this legislation, especially this early in the process, is unwarranted. We welcome the opportunity and have shown our willingness to work with interested and concerned parties. Last week, the district staff held meetings with stakeholders that resulted in consideration of a number of amendments to address their concerns. We have another meeting scheduled for the 16th of April to follow up with these stakeholders and discuss further changes that may be necessary. The legislative process allows ample time to work with concerns of the interest parties and to come to mutually acceptable solutions. It's important to note that this update is especially timely and necessary given the legislators' recent passage of the most sweeping water policy reform in generations. Given the new direction from the legislature and the need for increased conservation in the face of reduced reliability in our portable water supplies, it's imperative that the district have clear authority to manage and protect our local water resources for the long term. I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to testify here today, and we're ready to answer questions.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm Ron Davis. I'm the State Legislative Director for the Association of California Water Agencies. We represent approximately 450 public water agencies throughout the state of California, and for the purposes of full disclosure, obviously Santa Clara Valley Water District is one of those. Very pleased to support the measure. 2483 is a good measure that will, as both the author and the first speaker indicated, will provide transparency and allow a substantial improvement in terms of public participation in the development of future decisions made by the Board of Directors. And the beauty of the public utility system, as you members of this particular committee are keenly aware of, when a decision that's very important is going to be made by the Santa Clara Valley Water District is made in their boardroom, which is approximately in the middle of this county. So anybody who has an issue with it will be able to attend that hearing and voice their concerns and or support for whatever decision is being made. So that's one of the huge advantages that folks who have issues with this bill will be able to take advantage of when an opportunity to hear an issue before the Santa Clara Valley Water District occurs. It will occur in their boardroom, which is close by and easily accessible. As both the author and the previous speaker have indicated, this measure is going to modernize the statute to facilitate opportunities to use water more efficiently, protect the quality of their water, and provide safe, clean, reliable water for their communities. It's very consistent with the approach that the legislature is encouraging water agencies and has been encouraging for several years. And for these reasons, we would highly recommend a yes vote for Mr. Cota's measure.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? Wow. Like I said, if we could have no more than 3 speakers, the rest will be add-ons in their opposition. So,
Great Oaks Water Company. John Tangerson is the one.
who's ever going to go first? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Timothy Biddle. I'm Director of Legal Affairs for the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. I've read this bill, every word of it, front to back. This bill is a huge power grab by the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Hidden in the subtle fine print of this 50-page bill, the district gives itself ridiculously broad powers that no small district should have, some of which are overlapping and in conflict with state powers. The district wants the power to enact and enforce laws that regulate human activity in order to, quote, plan for and respond to climate change. The district wants the power to create a market for and sell pollution credits. The district wants to expand its power of eminent domain to property outside of its own borders with express authority to condemn private water companies and privately owned electric power facilities, such as PG&Es, so that the district can own and run them by itself, presumably to control growth by refusing to grant new hookups. The district wants the power to ration water that farmers can use or that private water companies or cities can deliver to their customers. Especially frightening, given how essential water is for life, the district wants the legal title to water within its borders transferred from the people of California to the district, using the same words the Constitution uses to preserve in the people the paramount right over the use of water. This bill would give the district the, quote, paramount right over the use of water within its borders. Everything the legislature does for one agency becomes precedent that other agencies cite back to you as justification for giving them the same power. How many agencies belong to Aqua? Do you really want that many little Napoleons running around with the authority to invent and enforce their own rules about climate change, pollution credits, population control, and how much of the district's water the people get to use? As repulsive as this power grab is, Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association's main objection to this bill is that it tries to circumvent the Constitution, Proposition 218, put into the Constitution by the people, and to interfere with the operation of the courts. There are 2 lawsuits on appeal today litigating the question of whether groundwater charges can be imposed without an election and whether they can be tiered. The Santa Clara Valley Water District is one of the defendants in that litigation, and it lost in the trial court. The trial court said that it cannot impose groundwater charges without an election receiving voter approval. What the district is trying to do is relitigate its case here in the legislature, because this bill contains express language saying that it could impose groundwater charges without an election, and that it can tier groundwater charges. The legislature has always had a policy against crossing the separation of powers to decide contested legal issues in favor of one party in pending litigation. This policy not only protects the integrity of the judicial system in the eyes of the public, it protects legislators like yourselves from accusations of undue influence. We hope that you will either amend this part of the bill out or else table this bill until after the courts of appeal have had a chance to rule on the constitutional questions of whether Proposition 218 requires voter approval of groundwater charges and whether it allows groundwater charges to be imposed at different rates. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Guster. I'm General Counsel of Great Oaks Water Company. With respect to AB 2483, we have a number of concerns that I'll outline right now. First of all, relating to process. While the district claims that the district has provided an open process for this legislation, that would be news to all of the retailers and cities within Santa Clara County who attended a meeting March 26th at the Water District and heard for the first time many of these provisions. In fact, it wasn't until more than a month after the bill was introduced on February 19th that the retailers were actually invited to come to the Water District to participate in the process. It's far from an open process from our perspective, and while we have continued to work with the Water District while it is here in the legislature, the overall overwhelming sentiment at the March 26th meeting was that the bill ought to be withdrawn and worked on so that it could be improved. With respect to something Mr. Biddle said, we were actually the plaintiff in the case against the Water District last year, and we established that the district violated certain provisions of its own District Act, the current law, as well as Prop 218. Those issues are now on appeal. Some of the violations of the current act relate to restrictions on how the district may spend groundwater charge money it collects. Those restrictions are actually removed in 2483, removing accountability that exists under present law. This bill also specifically interferes with the operation of utilities and municipal water systems in the way that they conduct their businesses, provide water supply. It conflicts with public utilities regulation of water companies. This bill also greatly affects water rights. It would allow the Water District to order a temporary or perhaps even permanent restriction on the use of groundwater wells, and whether they are owned by utility companies like us or individuals, thereby depriving water rights to the owners of those wells, probably resulting in a massive basin adjudication that would take years, if not a decade or more, to resolve. We are deeply committed to improving this bill. The better course of action is not to move it through committee routinely, but instead to allow the bill to be either withdrawn and worked on or worked on without the pressures of the legislative calendar, which are not conducive to the changes this bill requires. Thank you.
Okay, and if you would kind of wrap up everything real quick, if you would, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. John Tang with San Jose Water Company. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide input on this, and thank you to Assemblyman Bracotto and the other co-authors for their work on this bill as well. We provide water to over 1 million people in the San Jose metropolitan area. We are the water district's largest retailer. We have many concerns with this bill. First, as Mr. Guster mentioned, we were only recently made aware of this, leaving very little time for us to review or respond to the language that's in here. We believe a more transparent and stakeholder-driven process is needed. Second, we are concerned with the ability of the district to impose tiered rates without providing any details as to how or when or if it will be imposed. Finally, we are concerned with language that would greatly expand their powers over the groundwater supply. San Jose Water Company's supply, groundwater makes up approximately 40 to 50% of our groundwater supply. And for the district to have potentially unilateral power to control extraction, limit the amount of wells that are constructed or modified is going to greatly impact our ability to provide reliable service to our customers. For these reasons, we are opposed to the bill. However, we welcome the opportunity and will continue to work with the author and co-authors and the district staff on revisions that will address all the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opposition? If you just use the mic there, you're hit it on name and organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Meg Katzen-Brown on behalf of the California Water Association, the Association of PUC-regulated water utilities. Obviously, you heard from some of those regulated utilities here today, and although we appreciate Mr. Cotto's efforts in bringing this measure forward, we would respectfully request the committee to hold the measure as it needs a lot of work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Smagel with California Water Service Company. We're also a retailer of the district serving the Los Altos area, about 50,000 California citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Warren Walsh. My family has lived and farmed in South Santa Clara County since 1850. We had our own water district, the Gavilan Water District, that was swallowed up by Santa Clara Valley in '83. We were made many promises that have all been broken as to representation on the board, which now with Mr. Cotto's bill that was passed last year, we have even less because the representation goes by population and the district extends well into the urban areas of San Jose, or the zone, the voting zone.
Thank you.
And as to...
real quick, because we've already gone through.
Okay,
So.
as to the powers that this bill seeks, I have a letter here that I don't know if you have seen it, where they have asked us to destroy a well that we got their permission to drill, that they stood and watched the sanitary seal being placed in, and because we followed the ground and didn't use the well for over a year, they stated they wanted us to destroy it or either start pumping and pay the tax.
Right.
And there's one last thing I'd like to say. I don't appreciate the heavy-handed tactics that have gone on. Last Friday, our family's opposition is known to this from the Water District. Last Friday afternoon, when all government offices were closed, my 80-year-old mother got a harassing call from a district employee. And the issue was, why hasn't my deceased uncle, who died in 1998, been paying his water taxes?
Right.
This is not the agency you want to give more power to. I urge you to vote against this bill.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Smythe and committee members. I'm Lisa Douglas. I'm Vice President of Public Affairs for the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities, and I'm here on behalf of Stanford University. Stanford has concerns about the bill, but they do look forward to working with the author to resolve those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opposition? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Danny Merkley with the California Farm Bureau. We've been made aware of some concerns from our local county farm bureau. They have been in discussions with the district to resolve some of those issues and concerns. We have not taken a formal position at this time, but wanted you to know that we are in discussion with them over those concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes testimony. Questions from the committee? Mr. Truxman.
I'll just
go along with the motion and second that have been made earlier and say I believe the Assemblyman's work on the bill, the district's work on the bill, it has several other committees to go to. There's a lot of innovative policy, a lot of good work that's gone into this. Certainly some concerns of a major document, a major plan, and I know, knowing the author, he'll work with the various parties to see that they get their concerns aired out even further. So I just want to go along with the support for the legislation and feel it's good government in terms of updating and modernizing. We need to do that, and this district has a long and good track record.
Ms. Caballero.
Yes, I want to echo what Mr. Torlakson has said. I'm a co-author on the bill with Assemblymember Cotto, and one of the reasons I am a co-author is because we do need to modernize a lot of the processes. We required by legislation last November that there be a mechanism for quantifying conservation efforts. It's going to be difficult to do. People are not going to be happy, and the tiered rate system is new to some areas, and it will take time to work it out. But I have received some information in regards to some of the opposition. There is a lot of work still yet to be done. There are more committees yet to go to, and I sit on the Water, Parks, and Wildlife, so we'll be looking at what amendments will be proposed at that point. But I do want to say that I do have confidence in Mr. Cotto as he moves this forward, that he's going to sit down and finish having conversations with everybody that's raised their issues today.
Yeah, I hear certainly the concerns that have been presented here, and we all know the significance of water controversies in California. I am encouraged that Stanford University will have a position in helping to resolve problems from perhaps a neutral point of view with some of the academic integrity processes that they use on campus. Hopefully will be brought to resolving these issues here among those stakeholders that are a part of this problem. So with the potential resources that I think that might be available, I know that we can count on the leadership of Mr. Cotto to make sure that people who have concerns are not only heard, but there are decisions that are made in the best interest of everybody who are stakeholders in that region. And for that reason, I can support the bill with that understanding.
Concludes questions. Mr. Cotto, if in your close, if you could address some of the concerns, the litigation concerns that were brought up, some of the 218 issues, and maybe address those in your close.
Let me just suggest that I forgot to mention, Mr. Chairman, that we are happy to accept the amendments that were proposed by the committee. That we are happy to accept the amendments proposed by the committees.
And those are already in print.
Right. And I just, as I stated in my opening comments, it's going to be our intent to continue to work with people who have identified issues. I heard today, of course, the notion of overlapping with state powers, the transferring of the legal title from to the district from the people, try to circumvent the Constitution and Proposition 218, the fact that retailers were, at least it was expressed today, weren't involved or invited to participate, restrictions on how dollars are going to be expended, conflict with public utilities, right? All of those issues we're going to look and address. And as this bill moves forward, we're going to continue to work with them to clarify any of those issues. So I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion and second to move the bill to Water, Parks, and Wildlife. Please call the roll.
Smythe?
No.
Smythe, no. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Arambula? Bradford? Bradford, aye. Davis? Davis, aye. Knight? Knight, no. Logue? Logue, no. Solorio? Solorio, aye. Torlakson? Torlakson, aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bill's out, 5.
Bill's out, 5-3.
Thank you.
We members, we have one more measure on our agenda. Ms. Skinner.
Oh, I get it. I'm slow today. Oh, my audience is leaving.
I know. Where are the fans going?
It's like a skunk walking out.
Right.
We don't really smell. Huh? Yeah, I was just saying, Cameron, we don't really smell.
Apparently. All right. We now have item number 6. Ms. Skinner.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Assembly Bill, I got to put my glasses on now to see the number, 2331. Existing law enables firefighters who are employed by federal government, state government, or local governments to be placed on a hiring list that's administered by the California Firefighter Joint Apprenticeship Committee. Current law further requires that the Apprenticeship Committee keeps the eligible displaced firefighter's name on the hiring list for at least 48 months, even if the firefighter has been hired by a fire department prior to that date. My bill, AB 2331, enables the Firefighter Apprenticeship Committee to remove the names of the firefighters on that list when notification is given that the firefighter has obtained new employment or been reemployed. Often they're reemployed by their same departments. Ultimately, the committee's list saves fire departments time and money with regard to the hiring process. It's also given federal, state, and local government firefighters the ability to continue to working in their chosen fire service career. This bill is an improvement to the list in that it will keep the list current for any prospective fire department that may want to refer to it as a hiring resource. Here to testify in support of the measure is Christy Buma, representing the sponsors of the bill, the California Professional Firefighters.
You'll notice we had a bipartisan motion and second. So I want to take that into account in your comments.
Members of the committee, Christy Baumer representing the California Professional Firefighters sponsors the bill. We ask for your aye vote.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Not any opposition? Committee questions? You may close.
Ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Okay, this motion is to pass to appropriations. Please call the roll.
Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Arambula. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Solorio, aye. Torlakson. Torlakson, aye.
That bill is out.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our business committee for the day. Without objection, we'll hold the roll open for about 5 minutes for any add-ons. Mr. Slart.
Very well done, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Moving across all.